Hello my friends, Russia continued to lose not just their soldiers but also commanders and qualified personnel. For example, today it was reported by the Russian media that Ukraine got revenge and eliminated the commander of 247th Airborne Assault Regiment of Russia, Lieutenant Colonel Lysitsky. And this is the very important achievement for Ukrainian army because this particular guy was the commander of the Russian forces which encircled the Ukrainian army in Ilovaisk back in 2014. By that time, the Ukrainian army command was not as professional as they are today, so because of the misunderstanding, miscommunication, for Russians it was possible to encircle our soldiers in Ilovaisk and they didn't provide any way out, and our soldiers decided not to surrender to Russians but break through their defense lines, and unfortunately we had lots of the losses in Ilovaisk. And finally, after 9 years, here we have the payback by Ukrainian army. Alright, it seems like the potential Ukrainian counterattack may not happen because Prigozhin said that the Russian Defense Ministry agreed to support them from the flanks. Just to remind you, not long time ago Prigozhin wrote the letter to Shoigu and published it openly and asked Shoigu for more reinforcements in their region, so mainly now Wagner fights inside the Bakhmut city and the Russian regular army is fighting on the flanks of the city. Well, if that is true, if Shoigu agreed to support Prigozhin in Bakhmut city, that is not good looking for the Ukrainian side in case of the counterattack again. But Wagners are still unable to encircle the city, simply they're out of their resources, and even with a new regular Russian army they cannot do it. And let me show you the piece of the Russian propaganda. For that we need to go for the website of CNN. Yes, it's not the Russian website, but we'll take this as an example. So if we go here to the bottom, this is the article about the deoccupation of Crimea. Here they say that reclaiming Crimea may seem like an unlikely quest for Ukraine, but, and they explain after all that Ukraine carries attacks, sabotages on the Russian infrastructure, military infrastructure in Crimea, and may try to retake Crimea. So it's not the unreal task actually, but what Russian propaganda did, they took this part, this sentence from that Crimea seems like unlikely quest for Ukraine, and put it in their media. For example, propagandist Anatoly Shary put it on his media, saying that return of Crimea is highly unlikely task for Ukraine. And he referred to the CNN article, but it seems like he hadn't read that. And yes, they use the United States or European resources sometimes to justify their actions or predict something bad for Ukraine. I'm quite positive about the deoccupation of Crimea. I think it would be done in a better way compared to Donbass, because there they have supply lines directly to Russia. There was the big drone explosion in Tverskaya Oblast that is not far away from the Moscow region, and around 10 days ago there was the drone spotted there as well, but it didn't explode. It was some sort of a surveillance drone, and here we don't know what that drone is. Russian side say that it is the modified Ukrainian Strizh drone. But it's very unusual if this was done by Ukrainian side because it hit the residential area and luckily no civilians were hurt. Because Ukrainians need to stay humans. We are not fighting against the Russian people, even though mainly they support Putin, but we fight against the Russian military. And the explosion there was really huge. You can see the big hole in the ground, and there is nothing around from what I can say, just some of the houses, the residential area, no any military activity from the first side. And here we have the Tverskaya region near to the Moscow region, very far away from the Ukrainian border. And they found some sort of the debris. It looks like alloy or aluminium. Here the part could belong to the drone. Russian news posted the information that Rustam Muradov, the best Russian commander, is dismissed from his position. He was the best actually for Ukraine more than for Russia, because by taking Avdiivka they wasted more than 1,000 soldiers. And also he failed all of the Wuhledar attacks where Russia lost more than 130 armored vehicles and tanks. And after that he was promoted by the Russian military command, but it seems like that situation went viral in the Russian publics and they decided to stop him for a while. I think that Rustam Muradov is just temporarily dismissed and he will take other position in the Russian army. Right, now we have the information from the Russian Defense Ministry, because they say that they've shut down the Ukrainian Tu-141 Strij on the way to Moscow, and that is why it basically hit the residential area, and for that Russia used a special system that may create the radio interference, and that is how they deviate the direction of the drone, yes, to hit their residential area. Well, I still don't know whether this information is true, because it's coming from the Russian Ministry of Defense, but still it is the official information, and also Ukraine is very limited in those drones, and we would never use those against the civilian infrastructure or civilians. So for sure it was on a military mission to hit something else, maybe even in Moscow, and maybe Russia even shut it down using the special interference. And now I'm gonna show you why Russia is losing so many vehicles and why do they have such tremendous losses. So this video should have been the casual Russian propaganda. Journalists went on the front lines to show how the Russian artillery Avdiivka works out there. And usually for the self-propelled artillery you fire maximum 6 rounds and then change your position. Well, depends on artillery you work on, but in that case it should have been done for sure, because it's middle and down to the short range artillery systems, depends on the rounds it uses. But the Russian soldiers decided to stay in one place, maybe to show their job to the media. And even Russian tankists were pointing at the drone. You see, the drone is flying over there. Guys, get out. But they didn't stop to explain it to their own soldiers. And journalists went inside that artillery system to film the operator on his duty. And after it, journalists went out to stay near to that artillery system, and that happened. Boom. So you saw that the shell penetrated the artillery system from above to the bottom and exploded. And once again, boom. So I don't know what that shell was. It's not the big huge artillery shell, maybe it was the tank round, because it left just a single hole and penetrated all of the artillery system. So here is the incoming and this is the outcoming directly to the driver's place. The driver was not inside, so he was the lucky one, and it went to the bottom and then exploded. And then they start to run away. Unfortunately, the artillery system survived and they will fix it on the factory. And now you understand that the vast part of the Russian army are the mobilized Russian soldiers who were civilians not long time ago, and they're in lack of experience. That is why they also have lots of the losses. And this video was filmed by the mobilized Russian soldiers who were just thrown to the front lines without any backup, with no supplies or equipment, so they decided to reach the people in Russia to say about their desperate state. They say that they've lost many from their battalion, and also they say that Russia has extra units to provide them with the friendly fire in case they want to retreat from the front lines. So they complain that they have the deaths ahead and deaths behind. And I knew that Russia created the special units for the friendly fire, but here officially it's been confirmed by those soldiers. They even say the names of commanders and responsible persons, and also according to the documents they should have been in Russia in a training right now. And now they fight unofficially with no any documents, and in case they lose their lives there will be no help for their relatives. Well, the video is quite long, it lasts 7 minutes and 30 seconds, and maybe I'll take my time to create the English subtitles for you to understand how Russian soldiers are feeling in Ukraine. Hopefully other Russian men would watch this video and decide not to go and fight for Putin. And let's go to the front lines, to the Bakhmut city. There is just a light movement from the Wagner forces, and they've took the part of this lake like 2 days ago, and it is today. Just to remind you, the dam was blown up by Ukrainian forces to create the stream that should have stopped Russians, but unfortunately they were able to cross the river and enter the factory zone, and now they entered the residential area from the north over here, and took the part of the street under their control. Now the fighting is intense there. Russia used more artillery today, and our forces left mostly this gray zone in the city center. We're concentrating on defending the western side of the Bakhmut because there's still the risk of encirclement. If we move out a little bit, yes, we give Russians some sort of the ground, and finally they may even take the Bakhmut city, but they will not encircle our forces. So I honestly believe that it's unreal scenario, and Wagner's would not be able to move from two of the positions to encircle the city itself, because for that they also need to move forward like 15 kilometers away from the city, and that would be in Chasiv Yar, and we have lots of the forces out there, so Ukraine doesn't use all of the forces in Bakhmut. The Ukrainian command makes frequent rotations of the forces, and we have some of the hospitals, one even in Chasiv Yar. Unfortunately, the losses for Ukrainian side increased in Bakhmut dramatically. According to some foreign independent resources, it could be up to 200 soldiers per day. And we cannot let this happen for a very long time, because we cannot basically afford this to happen. We are losing the best of the best. So this is kind of the dramatic situation for our forces in Bakhmut still, but I'm quite calm about the possible encirclement. It will not happen. And if we move southbound to Avdiivka, whether there were some of the changes, actually Russia retreated. Well, I'm very surprised over here on the south a little bit, and on the north as well. Maybe it's the Ukrainian counterattack in that particular area, and this border over here, it is from the 2014. Then the border of the self-proclaimed DPR was secured, so Ukraine was able to build the defense lines in Avdiivka. And what is also interesting about Avdiivka, that Ukraine announced the massive evacuation of any kind of the civilian personnel from that particular town. So this is the war zone out here, and I hope civilians will also evacuate, because still there are some of the civilians who left in Bakhmut. They decided to stay over there, and Russia continued to use artillery. Yes, I understand that they're afraid for their property and belongings, but it's time to evacuate, especially from Avdiivka and Bakhmut. For Bakhmut, it's already late to evacuate. It should have been done long time ago. And unfortunately, volunteers are risking their lives to evacuate civilians. So civilians, if you watch my videos, please evacuate from the areas that are very close to the front lines. But I don't think that they're watching me, honestly. If you live in such a city, you create lots of the problems for the Ukrainian forces, because they also need to take care about civilians, take care about their homes. If we speak about the abandoned place for our soldiers, it's more convenient to go to the houses, to the buildings, and take their positions for defense. So for the 2 consecutive days, they're just minor dates from the front lines. And what can I say? That still we have the chance to finish this war in Ukrainian favor, and it will be finished like that. Russia will never occupy Ukraine. They try to do it right now, taking the small steps in Donbass, but my friends, soon you'll be surprised by the very big events. And now, my friends, please press the like to this video, and if you want to get access for my podcast, for my regular live streams, and to my private Telegram channel, you may support me on Patreon and also on the sponsorship of this channel. You may find the links below. My friends, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.